Morning, everyone. Ik Ping from I Can Read Singapore. I know it's difficult to kind of remember the name, but my wife, she calls me Aches and Pains, so that's easy, right? So, anyhow, very, very honored to be here today in Al-Maghrib with this launching of I Can Read program. Now, we really started in Singapore under schools from the Ministry of Education in Singapore. More than 22, 23 years ago. So that's where we really started the program with the assistance of the program founder, who are two Australian education psychologists. Now, Tony is one of the founders of the I Can Read system, which he brought to Singapore. He was very inspired, or he found a necessity to develop a reading literacy program because his son was dyslexic. So together with his partner, Annabelle, they went through 15 years of research into how to teach early literacy. Okay. So we came by, and that's when the system was then scientifically proven, used in first in Singapore MOE schools. Later on, today our systems are used in about 17, 18 countries right now, including Australia and Singapore. We're working right now to implement the program in the United States as well. So there is a lot of questions about if there is already a English medium school or English medium teaching going on, why do we specifically need to be focused on teaching early literacy? Now, it's a misconception to think that literacy comes naturally, being able to read comes naturally through exposure. And over the last 20 years or so, a lot of research has proven this to be true. The United Kingdom, in fact, in 2014, mandated literacy to be taught specifically from kindergarten onwards. Okay. And that's a native, well, that's where English comes from, right? And in Singapore and in Australia, and now in United States, they call it by a different name. They call it the science of reading. So everybody, every single educator everywhere is now starting to recognize that literacy, especially in English, needs to be specifically taught. And we've been doing it for over 20 years. And more than happy to kind of bring this system to help the children of Bangladesh, especially in Al-Maghrib. Now, just a little bit of background why that is necessary. English, in its written form at least, it's probably the most inconsistent form of written language that you can find. In most languages, for example, I'm not familiar with Bengal, forgive me, okay. But for example, you wouldn't see a spelling bee competition in Italian. You wouldn't see a spelling bee competition in Spanish. The reason is very simple. There is only one way to pronounce that particular written form or written word. Only one way. Now, things are not that easy in English. Technically speaking, there are 44 sounds in English, there are 26 alphabets, and a lot of funny thing goes on. And what happens here is, if we have something like ice, spelled E-Y-E-S, ice, but we know that we're putting ice, I-C-E, in our cup, in our drink. Same pronunciation, exactly the same pronunciation, but it cannot come from, represented in two more different way of spelling it. There used to be a video clip that we love to play, and I'm sure on YouTube right now you can find a lot of this as well. Take the phonogram. I'm trying to think of not to use technical names here, but you take the letters O-U-G-H. Now you take the letters O-U-G-H, it will be cough, so it's off. But if we put a t in front instead of a k in front, it's now tough. It's off, not off anymore. Now if we put a B-O-U-G-H, put a b in front, it's bow. Now if then we now change it and then we are saying that we have enough of this. It's E-N O-U-G-H. Now there's a lot of complications in representation of the written form of English and the actual pronunciation that is going on. There are many historical reasons behind it. Think of it as a language that has evolved. And the irony here is that the more logical your kid is, the more your kid will get confused by this. Because, although they're little kids, some of them are very smart, they're very logical, right? So they'll be looking at this and they'll be saying, it makes no sense. In fact, it doesn't make any sense. So you cannot analyze it to its last bit. It is something that needs to be specifically instructed. There are multiple approaches that have been taken to do this. I'm sure many of you have heard of the syntactic phonics approach. Now, the syntactic phonics approach is something that is incorporated into our program as well, except for a very important details at the later part. But generally, you have the letters A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H. Now, unfortunately, most of the time, we don't pronounce them as A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, right? It's A, B, C, D, F, G. Now, you cannot really take the letter name as the actual pronunciation of the letter. Now, that's the approach of syntactic phonics, right? Syntactic phonics go, you need to learn your A, B, C, D, F, G, and so on and so forth. So that when the early literacy learners, not only little kids, any one of us who wants to learn to read English, we start from there. A, B, C, D, F, G. Understanding that is phonetic. But when we passed that stage of that phonetic stage, that's when the challenge comes in. Now, as far as a Spanish learner or a Spanish reader or Italian reader is concerned, the job is done because now you just have to blend them together. But unfortunately, in English, we're just getting started. Why? Love, L-O-V-E, move, M-O-V-E, enough, tough, eyes, high, you can go on and on and on about this. And the thing is that these are not just words that are infrequent. These are words that we're using, high frequency words, we call them, using on a daily basis. Now, from a syntactic phonics approach perspective, you will start to learn it that there are certain spelling rules that you need to remember. Unfortunately, from our perspective, that is not a natural thing to do as well, right? How many of us, if we read in English, starts to think of any rules? How many of us, if we write in English, start to think of any rules before we read or before we write? That's not a natural approach. Now, from our approach perspective, that's where a lot of coding system comes in. Now, long and short of it, I don't want to bore you further with all these technical details that all of us are actually very proud of. Okay, so I always ask people, do you have 3 hours? I can go on and on and on and on and on about this, but not to bore you with this. I think most importantly here, right? Most importantly, we started with the Ministry of Education in Singapore. We have international accreditation as far as the program is concerned from Alliance Finland. We have 20 years of success stories behind us. My children went through the I Can Read program themselves as well. By the time my kid was 5.5 years old, they were devouring Annie Blyton. They were going through Annie Blyton like nobody's business. I'm old school, so I'm still going Annie Blyton. Yeah. Children's book, okay. But fairly advanced children's book. What we can say is we have many, many years of success behind this. Once your children, our children, learns to read, a lot of the other subjects, a lot of subsequent learnings becomes easier. And further, the way that we have approached it is what we call an independent learning approach, teaching the kids to be independent learners. Now, those are very, very important life skills that transcends language learning. So I'm very happy, I'm very excited that we are introducing this program to Al-Maghrib. And I hope, and I do know, and I hope that your children, our students, will become independent learners in no time. And that will help them throughout their lifetime. Thank you.